This video is a continuation from the previous video. Okay, so rule number 5 is the rule of odds, and the rule of odds means that you generally want to shoot odd numbers, 1, 3, 5, 7. It's just more aesthetically pleasing. However, you're not always going to have that opportunity. There's plenty of ways to shoot evens, and we're going to look at a couple here. Okay, so there are 2 people in this frame. Now, granted, there are technically 3 heads, if you can't count the mask. That's a mask. But it works, right? So this person is on the rule of thirds. The head is at the thirds point, right there. And this person is the balance over here on the other thirds point, roughly, right? There's sort of an average. They're over a little bit. And so this person provides balance to this person. They're the one in focus. They're out of focus. But without that person in there, this shot isn't as interesting. And so there you have it. You can do 2 very well if you create a sense of balance with your second subject. Here's a great example of 2 people, right? And when you shoot, if you're going to shoot wedding photography, you're going to shoot 2 people in your shot. Symmetry. Both here we've got both vertical and horizontal symmetry. And so we've put their hands right in the middle, and they balance out the symmetry both horizontally and vertically. Here's another case where you've got a subject and the person in the background adds more interest and depth. Now, it looks like she's either the instructor or she's his wife, and she's talking to him while he's painting. Not really sure. But I think it's the instructor. And so it tells more of a story. The other person in the background is telling a story. And she's right there in the middle. And then he's on the right. The canvas is on the left, and it balances out her being in the background. Also, he's in focus, and we see what he's doing. And she is really just giving us more information about the context in the story, and creating an interesting composition. Okay, so feel free to shoot evens. Another great example, right? We have balance. We have people looking at each other. If we split this, again, we split this in half, both horizontally and vertically, you're going to see that their eyes are in alignment, they're balanced, the composition is balanced, and we can pull this off. And it's a great shot. Okay, so we talked about the duck, leaving space in the direction your subject is facing or moving. And in general, you want to. When your subject is moving into a direction, you want to give them area to move into. It keeps your shots from feeling claustrophobic. However, you can change that. You don't have to follow this rule. And I'm going to show you. It helps create tension in your photo by doing this. Okay, so instead of her being on this side, looking in this direction, she's over here looking in this direction. And it changes the dynamic and the mood of the photo. Now, she is pensive, which means she's deep in thought. And by her looking off the screen like that, it creates a sense of loneliness. It's like she's watching other people, and we're very clear of the fact that she's alone. And that's what that negative space does there. It's still balanced because that bright saturated red balances our character, but having her on that thirds point looking off, it tells a story. This is loneliness. This is feeling isolated or left out. And that's what that achieves by breaking the rule. In this case, we have her moving this way. And actually what's happened is she's in that tomato festival where they throw tomatoes at each other. By having her move this way, we get a sense of motion, right? If she was over here, she was going to be moving into something. But in this case, this is where she stopped. And having this space, having her moved this way so that her head is on this side of the canvas rather than over here, shows that we have achieved the end of the motion. Also, we can see the rest of her body and the rest of what's going on over here around her. You definitely want to clean that out of your shot. That is a hot spot in your shot. That is, the eye gets stuck here because it's the brightest white in your shot up against the blackest black. That's your focal point. You don't want it to be. So either clean that up or crop your shot. Great shot. So in this case, we have our character to the right with nowhere to move, but the eyes are looking back this way into the scene, and that creates a very, oops, I keep hitting something here, and there we go. And it creates a very interesting shot because it leads to a sense of mystery, but also it helps visually keep your lines in your composition within the composition, and so that your eye kind of goes around and it keeps it within the, so instead of if you were looking off here, it would be a different shot than having your subject look back into the photo. And that's a way you can establish a more creative and original pose without losing your balance. Blur the background for portraits. We have talked about this most of the time, that you want to blur the background. But you can break it, right? So let me show you environmental portraits, and we're going to talk more about what those are times that you want to not blur the background in your portraits. Okay, so here this is out of focus. I thought this was a better photo. Let's go to the next one. It's just a person in the background, and you can see everything. It's called an environmental shot because you're showing the person in their environment. Okay, here we go. So these guys are on top of a building, and I can't remember. It's been a while since they put them in there. I think they're graffiti artists, or they take photos up on high buildings or something. They're artists that do something on the top of buildings. If we blurred out the background, it would detach them from their environment. And part of what makes this photo good is that we want to see and put them in the context of their environment. Here, we separate him from the background with lighting, but we want, obviously he's an architect, and we want the background drawings to show and him to show, because this is an environmental shot where we're showing the architect with his work. And if that was blurred out, you couldn't really see his work. So this is a beautiful shot. Okay, so we have talked about not shooting portraits at midday, but we've also talked about what to do if you have to. And so you may not have a choice. And so obviously you know by now that this is definitely a rule to break. Okay? And there are great ways to do that. Here, her hand is shading her face and creating really a beautifully balanced you got this diagonal balance across the composition. So everything is very brightly well exposed, but because her hand is there, she's not squinting, and it creates a really cool, interesting shot. When you shoot at noon like this, you can get very, very high key shots, and that make romantic, ethereal shots. So the background becomes soft, and the focus now becomes on her, and her eye is the first place you go, and that's what you want in these kinds of photos. And then here's another one where, again, the model's using her arm to shield her face. Creates a great shot. Okay, so photographer Kevin Landor Johan took this photo montage, and it's showing you this woman in motion, and this is what he has to say. You need to know the rules in order to break them. This almost goes without saying. Learn the rules. Learn them so well you apply them without conscious thought. Composition means putting together. The way you arrange what you see in your camera's viewfinder determines whether you have a well-organized composition. If the elements of your photo are not put together well, your photos will not be nice to look at. As with many aspects of photography, it's very subjective. What you like, someone else might find hideous. Okay? Do your thing. It's okay if other people don't like it, as long as you are creating good art. You follow the principles and elements of design, and you create good art, and your audience will find you. And I'm telling you this from experience. Not everybody likes my work. You know, I think my husband doesn't like half the stuff I do. I'm like, hey, look what I did. He'll be like, oh, cool. Okay, you don't like it. It's okay. And do it for him. You know. And then other times he likes it, so you know, those are the ones he gets to look at. But you have to be you. You can never be a first-rate someone else. You can only ever be a second-rate someone else. You have to be you, and then you will be a first-rate you. Okay, I don't know where the picture went there. A creative exercise called Break the Rules can help to illuminate the number and level of restrictions on how you work. And that is very, very true. It can also be the basis for new ideas because you have to understand the rules in order to be able to break them. At the end of the day, innovators are rule breakers. And I'm telling you this as someone who is embraced fully the fact that I'm a rule breaker. And I will tell you the key to being a rule breaker is in knowing which rules not to break. And you have to pick your battles. You can't and you're not going to be able to break every rule. There are consequences for breaking the wrong rules. You break the rules in design. And in those rules that you want to break are not the client comes and says, I need this subject in this format by this date. Those are not the rules to break. Those are the non-negotiable rules. When I tell you this is the format, this is the thing, this is the inspiration, this is the deadline, those are non-negotiable. You can break all the other rules you want as long as you do it right. But you have to understand what is a breakable rule and what isn't. Okay? So you usually don't cut off body parts, right? You usually want to show the whole body. But this works so well because here's this kid and he's got something, and here comes this other kid and you can't see his face. Is he friend? Is he foe? What's about to happen? And so now we're curious and we're pulled into that shot. And it's a really good photo because of that. You can't see her face. What's so beautiful about this is the way she's hung her head and the light creates, the shadow creates a wing. How cool is that? Okay. Love that. Here we put the shoe right in the middle of the composition. This creates a lot of tension. This woman is walking into a room. The emphasis is on her shoes. We can't see the rest of her. Can't see anything about her. And that leaves this great sense of mystery to this story. What's about to happen? Is she there for a blind date? Is she meeting someone that she hasn't seen in years and is nervous about it? What's about to happen? Really, really cool story. Can't see the character, but we can see what's going on behind them. And it really creates this interesting sense of journey. Where is my character about to go? And you're curious. You want to know, who is this person? You want to know more. This happens to be an opening shot for a lot of movies because it works so well. Here's another one. What's her story? And this is a resource that you guys can use for breaking the rules, some photo tips on how to break the rules. And I am going to stop this here and continue in the next video.